Hello! Right, well it has been a while between videos. I'm in a new house since last I recorded one of these tutorials, new studio space, which is great. So I have had a few requests over on Instagram for some tutorials on my leather pieces, so that's what I'm going to start off with today. So I'm going to show you how to make this leather piece. So what I'm thinking is, in this video I'm going to show you from beginning to end how to make this exact design, and then over the next few weeks I will do some other tutorial videos on how to make different flower shapes and how to attach the flowers in a few different techniques so that you can achieve more height or more depth, and just a few different looks. So this is the one for today. So just so you kind of can get your heads around what we're doing, we are making each of these flowers. So you can see I've got 3 larger ones in the middle there and then 2 smaller ones on either end. And the flowers are made up by layering each individual layer of petals. So hopefully you can see that the smaller flowers, they've got this back layer, then another layer on top, and then they've got the small bud at the center, and then the larger flowers have an extra 3rd layer at the back, which is slightly larger. So obviously you can add as many layers as you want to create different looks. You can keep going back and getting larger, or you can just add a few of the same size to create a bit more depth. But I'm just going to stick to this today. And then the other thing that I just have to tell you before we get into the tutorial video is the very first step, which I didn't actually film, and that is stiffening your leather. So this is the rose gold leather that I've used for this piece, and it is already stiff. So you can see it's usually just like a regular fabric. Before you stiffen it, it's floppy and soft. This one obviously has a little bit more stiffness to it, for want of a better word. So to stiffen your leather, all you have to do is mix equal parts PVA glue with water, and then get like a nice wide craft brush and just brush it onto the reverse side of your leather, so not the good side, the other side, and then just leave it to dry and it will stiffen, or if you're in a hurry, get out your hairdryer and give it a blow wave. And the reason that we do that is because later on we're going to be using heat to shape the flowers, and having your leather stiffened will allow them to keep their shape. So I think that's all you need to know before we get started. I will list every tool and material that you need in the description, and I'll pop some links in for you as well. Otherwise, enjoy. Back again, I just thought I would also pop it on quickly so that you can see how it looks on. So that's it, it's an off-center design. And the other thing is, because we are building these flowers on wire, so they stay in place, but they're also malleable. So if you, depending on what look you're after, and I'll show you this later in the video, you can bend them back further so that they're sort of more flush against your head if you don't like that height. Or you can have them sitting up as high as you like. So anyway, that's it on. Now enjoy. Alright, so to get things started, you are going to need your flower templates for each of those layers that I showed you just before. So for my 3 large flowers, I need a small, medium and large flower template, and then for those 2 smaller ones I'm just going to use the small and medium size. And then for each of my 5 flowers I need that really extra small template that's going to be used to make that bud at the center. So I'm just tracing them onto the reverse side of my leather. So to find these templates, you can literally just go to Google Images and search for flower outline and pick one that you like. and copy it over to, I just use a Word document, and then you can resize it in a few different sizes for each of your layers, and then print that out and trace it. So I've traced it onto, I'm just using some sort of old vinyl fabric here, but you could trace it onto some cardboard or something so it's easy for you to copy onto your leather, and then just go for it. And I'm not really being too precious with making sure I'm tracing it exactly right, because obviously flowers don't need to look perfect. We want them to look a bit more natural. So I'm tracing enough to make those 3 larger flowers and 2 smaller ones for this particular design. And then that last smallest flower that you can see sitting there, just grabbed it now, that is my bud template, so I'll need 5 of those. Next step, very straightforward, we're just cutting them out, so just a nice sharp pair of fabric scissors is what you're going to need here, and just try and cut slightly inside of the line that you've drawn so that you're not going to see it on the reverse side of your headpiece. So yeah, nice and simple, just cutting all of those out. All right, getting into the fun stuff now. So we're going to start shaping the flowers. So what you can see here is I'm using 2 seat cushions, because you're going to need something soft that you can press into. So you could literally just use a unused kitchen sponge if you wanted to. There's an old piece of fabric on top of that to stop me from burning the cushion covers. Some pliers, a screwdriver. In the top right there you can see a soldering iron just sitting on the safety rest that it comes with, and you'll need some sort of heat-proof bowl or plate to pop the heads of your soldering iron in after you have used them. But I'll go through all of this now as I start working. So like I said, we're shaping the flowers. So you want to lie them all down with the metallic side facing down. And then what I'm doing here is scoring a line down the middle of each of the 5 petals. So my soldering iron has been on and heating up, and it has heated up that knife head that I've got attached to it at the moment. So you can see those score lines going down the middle of each of those petals, and then it pushes it out on the front side as well. I'll show you on the larger one, you might be able to see a bit more clearly. So pressing down, and you can see this is why we're using the soft spongy side. I'm just going to turn it down to medium heat, so you're going to want to monitor how hot your soldering iron is getting. That has just curled up a little bit too much for my liking, that first petal, so I've just turned it down a little bit, and I'm just going to press a little bit more softly while I wait for it to cool down a little bit. But yeah, sitting on that spongy bit so that we can really press into it and get that shape. So just going to repeat the process with all of the layers of petals, except for, you can see sitting next to my bowl there, I've got those 5 bud layers. Those ones don't need to be soldered. All right, so I'm going to swap heads now. So you definitely want to remember that this soldering iron is very hot. Don't touch it. Use your screwdriver to loosen the head, and then use your pliers to remove the head attachment. So you can get a bit of a good look here. That was the attachment that I was using, that knife edge, to create that line. I'm now going to add this small ball head attachment. So again, using my pliers and then my screwdriver to get that all secured. I've still got that on medium heat because this is a small head attachment, so it's not going to take too long to heat up. While it does that, I'm just going to flip these over, because now what we're doing is pressing into the center of the flowers, and I'm using this smaller head on the small and medium-sized petals. So something to keep in mind while you're doing this is with metallic leathers, like I'm showing you here, depending on the heat of your soldering iron, you are probably going to pull some of that metallic layer off. It's not a problem because we're going to be covering it, but it's just something to keep in mind. And then I'm just using my screwdriver here as well. Sometimes it can stick to the leather, so I'm just using it there to help me pull the soldering iron away from each piece as I push down on it. So you can see we're starting to really create a nice flower shape here. So again, I'm just going to swap heads. I'm just going to use a slightly larger ball attachment for the last 3 large layers. So pop that in and secure it. And I'm going to turn it up to full heat to heat up because this one's a little bit larger. So I don't know if you can see, but in the center there, some of that metallic has come off with the heat. Again, not a problem, just depending on how you're going to be using them, it's something that you want to keep in mind. If you're not using a metallic leather, this won't happen, although the color can alter slightly. So you just need to experiment and figure out what works for you. So flipping over those last 3 larger petals, and I'm going to push into the centers of those. Next step is to just skewer a hole in the center of your flower layers so that we can thread them onto a wire. So I'm just pushing, I don't want the hole to be too wide because I don't want them to be sliding up and down the wire. So just a small hole at the center of each petal, and you're going to want to do this for the bud layers as well as the main ones. Okay, time to start building the flowers on some wire. So this is just some paper covered millinery wire. So just going to cut off enough for 5 stems. These are maybe roughly 10 centimeters each. It doesn't matter too much how long they are. They're all going to be cut to size anyway, so they don't need to be the same or anything. Just give yourself enough room, so about 10 centimeters. And then all we're going to do is thread the layers onto the wire. So starting with the largest first. So this will obviously form one of those 3 larger flowers because I've started with the large size, then gone medium and then small. And then for the bud layer, that one is going to go on metallic side down. So the reverse side is going to be showing facing up when you pop it on. And then to lock those all in place, you're going to grab the top of the wire and turn it 1 full turn, squeeze it in and repeat. Grab the top of your folded bit, turn it and squeeze it in. And then grab that folded over bit and just turn it halfway so that it makes a little bit of a foot, so that you can pull it down flat against your petals and they won't fall off that end. I'll show you that again in a second. So just making one of the 2 smaller flowers now that's going to go on either end of the headpiece. So I'm just starting with the medium-sized flower and then the small one, and then I'll pop that bud layer on as well. Again, that goes on metallic side down. Grabbing the wire right at the tip and doing a full turn, pinching it in, and then grab that again and turn again, pinch it in, and then grab that coil and just turn it so it's flat. Okay, time to secure everything together. So you need your craft glue and just an old thin paintbrush. So the first thing that we're going to do is make that bud at the center. So you're just going to apply the glue to that reverse side that's facing up. And just keep it to a fairly thin layer because we don't want glue oozing out. So these petals are now going to get folded in over one another. So pick one to start with, fold it in, hold it down, and then grab one that's opposite and fold it over the top. And just repeat that action. Holding it down. Depending on how stiff your leather is, this can be a little bit trickier, so you might actually want to trace your buds onto some soft leather that hasn't been stiffened, and then that will glue really easily together without bouncing back up. So you can see we've got the bud there now, and that metallic side is showing rather than the reverse side. So now we just have to secure the rest of the layers of petals. So pop some of that glue on the base of your bud. Just a little bit will do the trick. Again, we don't want it oozing out. And then pull down that first layer and spin it around and see where everything looks best together, and then stick it down. And so then repeating that same step, popping a bit of glue on the base of the petal. And now here you'll want to make sure that the petals from that small layer are sitting in between the gaps from the medium layer that I'm pulling towards it. And here you can see that we are covering up any of those midsections where the soldering iron pulled the metallic off the leather. So you're not seeing that anymore. I'm finishing up with the final layer. Again, you're going to want to make sure the medium petals are sitting in between the gaps of the large ones. And there you have it. So just repeat that for the rest of them. Now to prep them for your headband, you're going to want to grab them with your pliers right at the base of the stem and then push them down so that the stem is coming out from in between two of the large petals. So the stem is flush against the flower. And just grab that with your pliers as close to the base of the flower as you can. Okay, we are ready to attach. So you're just going to want to take a minute to figure out the composition of your piece. You can see I've got the two smaller ones on the outside and then the three large ones in the middle. And I think I want this first smaller one to attach just to the right of the center of the piece. It's going to be an off-center piece. So hold it in place with one hand and then wrap the wire tightly around the headband with the other hand. I go about 4 times. And don't worry, we're going to tidy this up. So with that leftover tail, we're going to trim that fairly close, but leave enough room so that you can, with your pliers, fold that little excess bit over the headband Just remember though, you're going to be wearing this, so you don't want that poking into your head. So keep it fairly short so it's not coming over the other side. And then pinch that coil together to tidy it up a bit. You can squeeze it so it's flat against the headband and just straighten up your flower a little bit. Now at this stage, this flower, you'll still be able to slide it across the headband. We're going to secure it later, so it's good to still be able to move it so that you can make sure that everything is 100% where you want it to be. So just repeating that process, holding it really tight with your left hand, wrapping again tightly with your right hand, about 4 times around, trimming off the excess and then folding that little bit over, pinching the coil and just straightening everything up. So just repeating that process with the rest of the flowers. If you guys would like to request any other tutorials, just head over to my website or Instagram to have a look at my other designs, and then shoot me a message and let me know what you're interested in, and I'll pop something together for you. Definitely starting to look like a headpiece now. So at this point, while they can still all move, you can slide them around the headband and make sure everything is where you want it. This is a good time to try it on yourself as well and see how it's all looking, because things can look quite different. Once you're happy, bring in the super glue, and you'll want a precision point super glue like this one. And then flip it over, and we're just going to apply just a small drop of super glue to the area where the wire, the wrapped wire, meets the headband. And within a few seconds, that will be holding everything very securely in place. All right, one of the finishing touches is to wrap some fabric around your headband to cover up those wire joins. So I'm using a strip of tulle here, which I find works best, but see what works for you. I'm going to tie it in a tight knot right up against that first wire join, and I'm going to seal it with some super glue. I don't want to tie it in a double knot because that'll make it a little bit too chunky. I'd prefer to have it as flat as possible against the headband. I'm going to trim that nice and close to the knot, and then literally just wrapping the headband and covering up those wire joins nice and neatly as you go as well. And you obviously want to match this fabric to the colour of your headband and the colour of the wire. This is one of the steps I find that takes the most patience out of everything. All right, as you get to the end, you're just going to pull the last bit flat over the underside of your headband. So I'm holding that in place with my finger quite tight, and I'm just going to run some super glue over the tulle. I'm going to carry it over down the headband a little bit as well to really seal it. So just hold that taut in place for probably about 30 seconds, and that should all seal off. So I'm I'm just going to leave that tulle hanging to make sure it's 100% dry. In the meantime, I'm going to adjust the positioning of my flowers. So at the moment they're sitting directly up, which is going to look a bit silly once it's on your head. So I'm just grabbing them at the top there and pulling them back and down a little bit so that they're on a bit more of an angle back against your head. So you can see how those two are leaning back a little bit more. Again, this is a really good time to try it on and see how it feels. You can, once you're wearing it, you can push the flowers back a little bit with your hands if you find that that's easier. Using the pliers just helps to kind of keep that structure in place a little bit better. This is all personal preference, so just keep trying it on and see where you feel comfortable with it. And then just have a play with the flowers. You might like that middle large flower to be overlapping the flowers on either side of it. But I think we're looking pretty good. So obviously that very last step is just to trim off that excess tulle. So just get the smallest, sharpest pair of scissors that you've got so that you can cut it as close to the band as possible. So you shouldn't really even notice that there's a cut there. And we're all done. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found that useful. Please do feel free to get in touch any way that's easiest for you, commenting below, email, Instagram, whatever works. If you've got any requests for tutorials down the track, or if you have any questions about this one. And if you do have a go at it, send me some photos because I'd love to see what you do. I will be back soon with some more tutorials on leather, so I'll do some different flower shapes and different methods of attaching, so stay tuned for those. See you guys.